Disclaimer. In this episode, a word will be used that in our current context is a derogatory racial epithet, but as will be discussed, the etymology of the word in context of its use here is of a completely different origin and has no connection or connotation to the slur. This will be explained further in the episode. All the same, I will try to keep its use to a minimum out of sensitivity. However, it is the name of one of our main characters, so please bear with us.
Hello, dig for bones.
I don't think anyone knows that I'm the one cut off your toes and put them in the drawer with the sock.
Hello, and welcome to the Least Haunted Podcast, a place where science, skepticism, humor, and anthropology meet to discuss all things spooky, haunting, supernatural, and sometimes just the plain ridiculous. I'm your host, Cody Franks, and joining me as almost always is giggling, giddily, ghostly, guiding glyphs, guardedly graphing, goofy gossip in Garamond.
Jeramond. Oh, I like that. I like that font. Hi, this is Garth. And joining us for the second time is... All right, here we go. Thanks a lot, Ken. Creating a curious cachet of curly-Q calligraphic characters, considering carefully crafting it cautiously, the code was cracked. Cruising with crayon on cardstock with the chance of getting carsick to catapult and colorfully catalog a collage of coalescent cornucopia of cursives, conjuring courageous carpenters called by command to clash calamitously in a cacophony of crushing and caterwauling against criminal cretins, crackling callously and corrupting against the chivalrous crown, clouded over by a cavalcade of crows, concerts, champions, chimeras. What? Damn it.
Corsairs.
Corsairs, champions, chimera captains, chittering, Chintus, crab's claw, colossal, callous, clobbering, cyclopses, clomping, cantankerous, and cruel, a coplus of causing craters and calcification, clergy cant and covens cast, cavemen, carnal, cavolling, cambion, clash chaotically, centaurs creep and cajole charismatically, calling for calm, claiming a carefree community and common consideration, cleave through the core of commotion. You can introduce yourself. Go
Cool.
ahead, Michael. Cool. It's Michael Swaim. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for bearing with me with the very longest intro that we've had so far. That was 96. A litter of words.
I won't use any C words for the rest of the episode to balance it out.
Speaking
of which, Cody, I appreciate the disclaimer, but I just want to say to the audience, I won't be using the racial epithet at all. And that's just like a moral superiority thing. I just choose not to. Yeah, so you use it as much as you feel is justified to get your point across. I won't be using it.
Well, yeah, okay. Thanks.
I got you, bitch. I got you.
The man is a pro.
You seem like a dick now.
Do you hear how many times Cody said it? Well, guess what? Michael didn't say it once.
Well, the question now you're wondering, like, well, what is the slur?
Right.
Oh,
what country we talking here? You know the one. The really filthy one. Simpsons joke. Not my
Yeah, no, I got it.
Well, before we get into the story, how is it going, Michael? How you doing?
Doing good. I have very physiochemical mental health problems, which I'm public about. So it's fully... If I am on the right med, I'm doing good. So I'm doing good.
Good.
My external circumstances hardly matter. I mean, those are like everything is crazy right now, as you know. But
yeah,
I'm fine.
I've been fortunate.
I feel like I would.
Oh, go ahead,
Garth.
I was going to say I'm fortunate enough to have pretty. My brain chemistry works pretty well with me, and I find
stable.
that pretty much, and I find that circumstances are not always the biggest factor in my attitude either. It tends to be more internal, but yes, in the world things are crazy right now.
Okay, so even normies, yeah, that isn't because I'm like, it's fascinating to me how whether you feel things are going well has almost no connection to if they actually are, because you don't even know that till you look back. And I'm like, I guess that was good.
Yeah.
You
You don't know at the time whether the good is good or the bad is bad. The Vonnegut thing. Yeah. Is it good news or bad news?
It's pretty bad coming from like the normies, as you said.
At the moment, it's leaning in a very objective way. Yeah. for
Yeah,
sure.
and I had this moment the other day where I was like, I had to rectify this really fucked up thing that was, uh, I probably will be all right in the future fascist situation because I'm really far down on the list, the solution list. But that's only because of my privilege. And I'm like, dude, this is fucked up because there's a lot of people out there who just don't give a shit because they don't have
Right.
any skin in the game. It's like it doesn't matter to them.
God, there's a clip of Seinfeld and I want to say Bernie Sanders, but that's not his name. Curb
Oh,
Your
Larry David?
Enthusiasm, Larry David. He's a fucking genius. I know his
Yeah.
name normally, but talking about how, they are joking, but it stung where they're like, kind of doesn't matter if Trump gets elected. Like, it doesn't affect me. Yeah, it doesn't affect me. So
Yeah.
it's like, damn, dude.
Yeah.
Cold. But
Hell,
true.
Yeah.
As long as everybody votes, that's what's important.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Let's talk about haunted things. I want to talk about the least haunted things.
Yeah, we're gonna turn to a topic that is not as Garth hates the word problematic, but
No,
maybe not
I
as
don't
troubling.
hate it. It's just not a term that I tend to use myself. But there's a dozen terms that are common
right,
that I don't tend to
snowflake.
use myself. Yeah, exactly.
Low T.
Speaking of teas, this part of the episode I have listed as Twain Talk. We're going to talk about Mark Twain for a moment. How do you guys feel about Mark Twain?
For a long time, my bio on Wikipedia was Michael Swaim was born and died during the transversal of Halley's Comet, which I was very proud of, but it kept getting taken down. A Mark Twain reference.
Yep.
I love him. I read his entire declassified autobiography after
That was
it
a
came out,
big book.
which
Wow.
he said he couldn't. Yeah, you have to release 100. Yeah, it's like 1,000 pages of
Jeez.
not like self-serving, just essays and ranting. But I love him. Yeah, he's proto Vonnegut.
I can't imagine why, Michael.
Yeah. Well, he's wry and he thinks everything's terrible and we're all gonna die and kill the earth. But that doesn't mean you can't joke about it.
Yeah,
There you
okay.
go.
Well, so
like
then
that
you're
might be
gonna...
all you can do.
I haven't read a lot of Twain. I read like Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, and I think
Well,
maybe
it's usually
something else.
like
in
people
school.
are bullshit. but
Yeah.
in a funny, clever way.
No, I really like him as a writer.
Yeah.
But I have not delved into him all that much beyond just like, I think he's very clever and the kinds of things he was writing seemed very ahead of their time when you think about the fact that he was writing them in the late 1800s.
Then he has a whole different channel of kid-friendly stuff, like Kid in King Arthur's Court and whatnot,
Yeah.
where you're like, and that's just a story that he told. Or like The Frog of Calabasas County.
Yeah. Well, I will probably ruin him a little bit for you guys.
Great.
Then. Although, actually, having read that autobiography, you probably are in a better position than I am for some of this because I'm only going off of secondhand sources and people putting words in his mouth, not straight from his mouth. But we'll do a brief, quick bio, just the bullet points. As you said, came in with Halley's Comet. November 30th, 1835 is when he was born. He was born in Florida, Missouri, Florida man. But then he went to Hannibal, Missouri, which is where he's famous for being from there.
Cannibal Man.
Hannibal man. He was a paddle boat pilot, which is where he got his nom de plume, Mark Twain, which is riverboat speak for 2 fathoms. Which is 12 feet, which is the safe operating depth for a riverboat, but is also the point at which it becomes dangerous to be operating a riverboat. It's that middle ground, which is kind of what he was towing with his writing. He had a younger brother named Henry, who he got a job on one of the paddle boats with him, and then the boiler exploded, and 8 days later, his brother died from the horrific injuries,
Whoa.
something that he blamed himself for his whole life, but he claimed that he had dreamt it was going to happen 1 month before it did. So he actually joined a psychical society and was somewhat interested in spiritualism and psychical research.
You know what?
he was-
Fuck around and find out. Don't dream it if you don't want it to mysteriously happen, bro.
Right?
You see what happens?
He was briefly a Confederate for a few weeks. Him and some buddies, they formed their own volunteer Confederate regiment, and then disbanded after a few weeks, at which point he then went to Nevada, where his older brother...
Maybe slavery. No, you know what? No.
Yeah.
No.
I thought about it some more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to Nevada.
Yeah. So he goes to Nevada, where his brother Orion is a secretary to the person who is like the governor of the whole Nevada territory. The adventure of getting there to Virginia City is what he tells in Innocents Abroad, which is one of his first like major works. Then he does a bunch of speaking tours. He starts writing his books. He then comes around to being an abolitionist. However, this is the part where I'm going to ruin it. Long-term genocide fan. Like hardcore, staunchly anti-indigenous peoples of the Americas. He said when he toured the rest of the world, he was always shocked and dismayed at how the whites treated the, quote, savages in those lands, and they needed to treat them better, but not in America. In America, he said they all needed to go. He was a critic of the story, the Deerstalker stories. So, Last of the Mohicans he said that, Cooper, who wrote those, was sorely misguided, and that there was nothing salvageable about the, indigenous race, or the Indian race, as he called it. So I really wish Picard had kind of like taken him aside at that one time and been like, hey dude, like seriously, cool it with the genocide.
It's like, you love Guinan, a black woman,
right?
so you're
wait a
aware of
minute.
intersectional issues, you know, at least in theory. Yeah, very disappointing. H.P. Lovecraft, similar story. If you go down that rabbit hole, you're like, oh, that's real bad. Oh, that's real bad.
So with your knowledge of his books and having read all of his stuff, have you guys ever heard of his novel Jap Heron?
No.
No, and I haven't read all his stuff. I just got gifted that giant biography, and I saw it as a challenge. I'm like, well, I have to read that. It's 1,000 pages.
Because it's there.
Oh, and it was a cool premise too, because it was published 100 years after his death. So it's like, oh well.
Which is
how
funny,
many authors do that? That's amazing.
It implies that it's going to be really juicy, or like blow the lid off stuff.
Yeah.
But it's really just like Dave Barry's column, 1,000 of them. You know, it's just his like essays.
It's him not wanting to get in trouble with any of his contemporaries for what he has to say.
Like,
I'm guessing.
yeah, shareholders and shit that we don't
Right.
care about, that don't matter anymore.
As we're going to find out, actually, he probably was considering his publishers because he had signed over to them the copyright to the name Mark Twain and all of his works.
Wow.
So that's going to come up in today's story. But yeah, the novel I brought up was called... See here, now I'm going to have to say it twice, so Michael has even more moral superiority on me.
If you
But
say
the novel
heroin,
is...
I swear to God, dude.
Well, it's Jap Heron. And the thing that's noteworthy about it is that it was written posthumously. That's right.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, so Mark Twain, he died in 1910. But in 1917, this book was published 6 years after his death. And the deal is that it was written through the use of Ouija board.
Wow. That's so inefficient. That's some Diving Bell and the Butterfly shit.
Yeah, how long did that
What a
take?
pain.
One letter at a time.
Yeah, we'll get into the whole process on that. It was, it took months, as any book should take months to write. It involved 3 people in the process. So you have a medium who's moving the Ouija board. You have the person who is calling out the letters as they're appearing on the Ouija board. And then you have the dude sitting there who is writing everything down as the other person calls it out. Oh, so yeah, of course, he's dead. And I have this quote of his about the Halley's Comet. He had said, and I'm going to try to base my impression on him on Star Trek The Next Generation.
As you
and we'll
should,
see how well
yes.
that is. I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It is coming again next year. I expect to go out with it. It will be the greatest disappointments of my life if I do not go out with Halley's Comet. The Almighty has said, no doubt. Now here are these 2 unaccountable freaks. They came in together. They must go out together.
There is no try.
The humming to yourself really sold it. That was good, Cody. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. So at the time, spiritualism, huge. We've talked about that many times on the show. The rise of spiritualism in the United States, kind of as a result also of the Civil War and people trying to like heal and contact their dead loved ones from that. Ouija boards themselves, though, patented in 1901 by Charles Kennard in the Kennard Novelty Company. His business partner was Elijah Bond, whose sister-in-law was a spiritualist named Helen Peters Noseworthy. And they collectively worked on developing the Ouija board. The idea is that the name might be a portmanteau of oui and ja, meaning yes, yes in French and German. Although they claim that actually is a false etymology. They basically asked the board what to call itself, and a spirit told them Ouija.
That's actually a pretty good way to name it if that's the gimmick of the board.
Their first few attempts to patent it failed. Patent offices were like, no, that's stupid. We're not going to do that. And so they finally found a third patent agent and displayed to him that it could spell his own name from spirits moving the thing. And then he was like, sold. Patent granted.
It's funny, my wife, just by sheer chance, is half French, half German. And when I bring them to climax, they say, we, yeah.
just over and over in that order. And amazing.
I've never known why. It's been a huge challenge in our relationship. Now I know.
You have to incorporate a Ouija board now from now on.
I was going to say, as the digital manipulation of a planchette,
Right,
it's somehow
yeah.
part of your foreplay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The spirit board, before it was patented as the Ouija board, very old, very ancient. The earliest uses of a planchette and a board for this type of divination probably goes to 1100, the Common Era, and is part of in the Song Dynasty in China, where it's a key tool in one of the two schools of Taoism. And then later, the Qing Dynasty bans it. They're like, you can't use that thing anymore.
So the planchette is the little thing you put your hand on that slides around?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And it's part of a type of necromancy that is called automatic writing. The idea is that a medium can turn control of their body, basically, over to a spirit who will then manipulate their hands or some other device to select letters or to actually write out messages directly. But when the Ouija board was first patented, it was being used by spiritualists, but not as widespread. And it wasn't like really, it was just a parlor trick. Nobody really thought it was anything special until one woman named Pearl Lenore Curran in 1912. I know it seems like we're getting really far away from Mark Twain, but don't worry, it's going to come back. In 1912, there's this woman, Pearl Lenore Curran, who starts communicating through a Ouija board with a spirit named Patience Worth. Patience Worth was supposedly a young woman who lived in the 1600s. She was born somewhere in England, but she would never say where. And later, people tried to piece together clues to figure out. What
would you like to know?
Yeah, right.
I might tell you.
I'll show you what patience is worth. Essex.
She supposedly came to the colonies early on, where she was promptly killed by indigenous people.
I regret and retract everything me and I said about Patience Worth, a true American hero.
So Patience Worth starts using Pearl Lenore Curran as her medium with a Ouija board and dictates several novels and collections of poetry, which become bestsellers. Once that happens, people start getting really more into Ouija boards. Like, oh, we can use this. But see, here's the thing is that Pearl Curran had an accomplice who helped her in this whole process, which was one of her best friends, a woman named Emily Grant Hutchings. And Emily Grant Hutchings, she was a journalist who worked for the St. Louis, I think it's called the Globe. I'll correct it if it's wrong later. She was a journalist and was present at some of these psychic readings in which Patience Worth communicated. And then Emily Hutchins tells her boss at the paper about it. He publicizes it, and that's what gets it widespread attention. And then the books become bestsellers. Later, Emily Grant Hutchins is the one who ends up being the medium through which Mark Twain will write Jap Heron. And I've said it 4 times.
Can I ask...
Yeah.
Do you know? I assume you didn't read them, or did you?
Oh, I read
the
book?
Redacted. I read Redacted Heron.
Okay.
I read most
then
of
my
it.
question is, are the books good? Do you think they sold based on quality or word of mouth of I read it, it is good? Or did they sell as an oddity, because it's supposedly a haunted book?
Apparently, the Patience Worth books were well received.
These books are good. Okay,
they're all right.
Did they sound like Mark Twain to you?
Oh well, that's the different book. I'm
sorry.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I'm
The Patience Worth books.
Yeah,
They
But they're
apparently people said they were all right for the times. But then what kind of falls apart is that Patience then dictates a novel that's set in Victorian times, which would be her future, but the medium's past. And people are like, well, why is a woman from the 1600s talking about Victorian England? That seems a bit far.
I like that they're like, I didn't think of that. You're like, really? Your scam held together for so long.
I don't see the problem because the ghost has been hanging out this whole time. So the
Right?
ghost is aware of modern
ghost is
times.
still
I don't see any
experiencing
incongruity.
things.
It's not like
Yeah.
a time travel problem here.
Except, I mean, can ghosts travel around the world as a ghost? Because if she died in the American
Oh.
colonies, she wouldn't be really aware of what's going on in England.
But
Oh, well, that's
also-
ghost rules. I don't know.
But she's talking to other ghosts.
I
So-
write about the future. It's called science fiction. Like, can't
Yeah.
the ghost have an imagination or think of things? Is that not allowed? The ghost can write a novel about a different period.
The ghost might be reading books about Victorian England and imagining it. Doesn't mean the ghost has to go there.
Right. The ghost could be chilling out watching TV shows about Victorian England
There
and
you go.
writing spec scripts. Totally.
Well, it seems that the general modern consensus is that Patience Worth was actually a subconscious personality that Pearl Lenore Curran like had suppressed. The idea is that when she was younger, she wanted to be a writer, and her mother forced her to learn music and try to be like a music scholar or go to music school. And then she had like a nervous breakdown as a teenager, where she was like institutionalized because the stress of all this like stuff on her of like, we want you to do this, want to do that. And she's like, I don't want to do any of that. So then later in life, her husband had a good job and allowed her to like just kind of like do what she wanted. And she starts writing these things. And so people are like, well, maybe it was just this like wish, like she always had the ability to write and wanted to be a writer, and that was suppressed. And then when spiritualism came along, she's like, well, this might be a way for me to like, have my cake and eat it too. I don't know. But
Right.
that seems to be what some people have kind of theorized in modern times. And apparently this has happened a few different times. There's like multiple cases of people who produce artworks under the idea that they are being possessed or that a spirit is doing it through them.
Oh, it totally
later
makes sense if you're
Yeah.
like gullible and dumb, because people ask where ideas come from all the time, and if you're
Yeah.
a professional writer, it is like, well, you get good enough at it that you don't consciously think the words. You sit down and your hands move and
Yeah.
it comes out.
It feels
and then-
automatic, maybe.
And then you edit it and it does feel automatic. And I guess if you're dumb, you'd be like,
Yeah, right.
how is that possible? My hands are haunted. Whereas I think most people are just like, I'm doing stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
That's this experience. It's happening. It's fine. It's not a ghost.
So her friend who was present at this is Emily Grant Hutchings, who then later starts communicating not directly through Mark Twain. Like, it's a really convoluted story that she then later concocts. But if she's a writer, it's easy for her to then like create this whole false narrative of how this came to be. I'm not going to go into like all the nitty gritty, but like the Campbell Soup condensed version is that she went to see a famous medium give a talk. That medium couldn't make it. Like, for some reason, you think she would have foreseen that happening, but she couldn't make the engagement. And so they quickly found a replacement medium to step in, who started fielding questions from the audience and talking to spirits. And supposedly briefly Mark Twain came through.
Popped in.
And then, pops in, and then like requests that he should talk to the Hannibal girl. He's like, there's a girl here from Hannibal, Missouri, and I'd like to talk to her. And then Emily's like, oh, that's me.
Fuck you, ma'am. You know what you did.
Actually, that's more prescient, because it turns out the two of them actually had, spoilers, Emily Hutchings had actually interacted with Mark Twain in life on two separate occasions, including correspondences. So anyway, his ghost shows up briefly, wants to talk to her, but then quickly makes an exit. And so they ask her to come back later. They're like, no, he came back and he really wants to talk to you, but in a private setting. And then this eventually evolves into these sessions where they are, it's three people. It's the medium, whose name is Haynes, and then Hutchings, and then Hutchings' husband, Ed. And they are the trifecta who then start communicating with him. And I have like direct quotes because she wrote a letter that was the preface to the book when it was released. And it's a lot of Mark Twain just being an asshole to her, basically. So supposedly Mark Twain comes through and he starts dictating first just like pitches. He's giving them like story pitches. Like, how about this one? A spaceship falls out of the sky into a tree, and there's a woman on it, and she comes from Mars, and then a dude like rescues her from the ship, and then they tool around, and it's her adventures, and we're gonna call it Daughter from Mars. How's that one hit you? And they like do a couple test chapters of it, and then like they abandon it. He's like, no, I don't really like that. I don't know how it's gonna end, so forget that. How about this one? It's a metaphor about gardening and furrows in the soil, and they do a few chapters of that, and then he abandons that. Which actually is something that he was known to do. If you look at like the list of his writings, he'd started and like
A lot
abandoned
of unfinished stuff. Yeah.
yeah, a few different like Tom Sawyer sequels,
Mhm.
like a Tom Sawyer road trip story where he like travels the world,
Trying to
and gets
get
an
laid
initiative.
before the summer ends, and he has to go off to college. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. So here we go. At the end of their fourth automatic writing session with his ghost, he says, quote, "There will be minor errors that you will not be able to take care of. I don't object. Only don't try to correct my grammar. I know what I want to say. And dear ladies, when I say damn, please don't write darn. Don't try to smooth it out. This is not a smooth story. And you were too tired. Forces must be strong for results. Somebody handed you a lemon back there. Cut out that part about the apple at fly time." I guess some plot point he had mentioned. "I'm not carping. You have done well. The interpretation is excellent. I'm afraid of femininity. Women have their ideas, but this is not a woman's story. Goodbye."
Goodbye.
Yeah, I guess that sounds like Mark Twain.
They do mention, she writes that there were certain phrases that he kept using that he never used in any of his other writings, but that he like, they asked him and he explained that I'm trying something out. Like, okay.
Yeah.
So what is this story? What is Redacted Heron? So,
And it's not even
basically-
the bird, right? It's a name, Herron. Yeah.
yeah, it's a surname. It is kind of, it's like a Dickensian story. It's basically, what if Mark Twain had written David Copperfield, is basically what the story is. It's about a young man in rural Missouri who is in a very poor family with an abusive alcoholic father. The father slips and drowns in the river. The mother can't take care of all the kids, so she starts farming them out to distant relations. But she keeps the main character. His real name is Jasper, by the way. The other name is a nickname because, much like Pip in Great Expectations, he explains that his younger sister could not pronounce his name Jasper, so she always called him Jap or Jappy, and that's what
She
the
was
name that
virulently racist from a very young age. She had different horrible names for each sibling.
Yeah, what were the other shorthand names, nicknames?
Anyway, so his mother remarries stepdad. Classic story, abusive stepdad. He runs away to a new town. He shows up at a newspaper editor's office and recalls that his own alcoholic father had told him that if he had gotten into typesetting as a young man, his life would have been different. And so the kid walks into the office and just tells the guy, "Yo, I work here now." The guy says, "No, you don't." And then he just refuses to leave, and that works out for him. And so like the story is just this, like, it's about him growing into a man under the benefit of two very like well-to-do people who take him under their wings and shape him into an upright man. And then he then invigorates the community and makes his little village into a real town. Because the whole running through line is that the town needs a proper newspaper to be a real town. And so he helps build the newspaper and makes it a real town. And that's basically it. When she first went to publish it, apparently she didn't tell people that it was supposedly ghost written by Mark Twain.
Really, I think that'd be the big selling point. I mean,
well, she wanted to like feel people out first, and she showed her friend, who's the newspaper editor who helped get the Patience Worth stories out. She showed it to him, and he was like, "Oh, this is all right. I mean, it's an okay story." And then she's like, "Okay, well, let me give you the rest of it." And then here's the kicker, Mark Twain, and he's like, "All right." But
He's like, as long as we're making up whatever we want, could it be Jesus? Could Jesus have written
I can
this?
sell that.
Yeah,
There's a market for
gonna
that.
get us to another tier.
We actually have reviews of the book at the time
Hell
when it was
yeah.
released. Let's see. Book review. Okay, here we go. This is from September 9th, 1917. from the New York Times. Jap Heron, a novel written from the Ouija board with an introduction on the coming of Jap Heron, front piece portrait, blah, 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 blah. $1.50. That's how it's
That was
listed.
the review? Oh, okay.
No. Here we go.
Right.
The story itself, a long novelette, is seen in a Missouri town and tells how a lad born to poverty and shiftlessness, by the help of fine-souled and high-minded man and woman, grew into a noble and useful manhood and helped regenerate his town. There is evident a rather striking knowledge of the conditions of life and peculiarities of character in a Missouri town. The dialect is true, and the picture has, in general, many features that will seem familiar to those who know their Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. A country paper fills an important place in the tale, and there is constant proof of familiarity with the life and work of the editor of such a sheet. The humor impresses as a feeble attempt at imitation, and while there is now and then a strong, sure touch of pathos or a swift and true revelation of human nature, the sob stuff that oozes through many of the scenes and the overdrawn emotions are too much for credulity. If this is the best that Mark Twain can do by reaching across the barrier, the army of admirers that his works have won for him will all hope that he will hereafter respect that boundary.
Wow. Scathing.
Stay down, Langhorn.
Yeah, other people at the time reviewed it and said, like, if this wasn't Mark Twain, it would be an all right short story, like short book for a first time author. But if I was Mark Twain's editor, I would tell him, don't publish this. It's not good. But it goes on to start selling pretty quickly because everybody just buys into the story. Like, oh yeah, Mark Twain. Okay, I want to read this.
Yeah.
One person who was not pleased was Mark Twain's daughter.
Oh, right. He has family.
He has family.
Yeah, what did they think of all
I
of
mean,
this?
a lot of them died very
Yeah.
young and quickly,
Oh,
but
okay.
there's some knocking around.
Okay.
Yeah. So his daughter Clara is still alive and is one of the executors of the estate. He'd actually signed over, as I mentioned earlier, the copyright to the name Mark Twain and all his works to his publisher. So when this other book shows up, it raises some legal questions. And this is how it ends up going to the New York Supreme Court. It actually
wow.
becomes
Yeah,
a
like
court
they're like-
case.
Okay, if we're going to talk boundaries, violating the veil between life and death, fine. But we own your name. You cannot put that on a product, dude.
In perpetuity, it doesn't matter if you're dead. We still
Yeah,
own it.
perpetuity. Yeah. All known universes or whatever
Yes.
it said.
Yeah, his publisher, which is Harper and Brothers, they then sue the publisher of this new book, Mitchell Kernerly, who was actually a publisher of like religious pamphlets, which seems kind of, something that publishes like Christian religious stuff gets in on this, something written through necromancy. It seems like
Right.
that should kind of like cross some wires or whatever. The question at hand is going to be whether or not ghosts are real. One, because that has to be decided. Like, is this actually being written by a ghost? Two, how do you prove that it is the ghost of Mark Twain? And then, the pre-existing legal contract that exists. Like, does death separate somebody and free you up to then write something out of contract or assign it somewhere else? And so they get worked up about it. There's a lot of press that's like building up to this case, but then much like the Musk Zuckerberg fight, it just doesn't happen.
I really want to see what precedent is set from this.
Well, that's kind of the worry was like,
Yeah.
dude, this is going to set like a bunch of really weird precedences that we probably shouldn't actually like waste the court's time on. But what happens is that Hutchings actually, she folds. She withdraws it from publication. They tried to recall all the copies. So if it weren't for Project Gutenberg, you couldn't read this story anymore.
Oh.
Like enough copies survived and then were transcribed onto the internet, so it's there forever. But at the time, this is kind of similar to Garth to when we talked about the Boner book.
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna have to be more specific.
Yeah, which time did we talk about that?
Well, our
No,
most two recent episodes were all about books about genital magic. And so one of the earlier ones was all about the worship of Priapus, and it shook up and shocked England to the point where the author had to withdraw it from publication, and they did a recall, but enough copies survived for it to become like a cult thing. And then it actually then kind of started a cult thing.
So they pulled out, but it was too late.
Exactly. I do recommend everybody go listen to that episode. It's called The Dick Knight Rises. It's about 2 episodes ago. A lot of fun. Anyway, so this book is pulled and the court case is dropped. And yeah, then it just kind of fades off into obscurity. But I remember reading about this. It would show as a kid, it getting referenced a few times. This, like, supposedly Mark Twain wrote a book from beyond the grave. And I've always wanted to kind of discuss it. So that's the basic broad strokes.
Okay.
And we're going to, now kind of open it up and just to talk about this more.
I don't think I ever heard about this story. Did you, Michael?
No, not at all.
Not surprising.
But you heard about it as a kid, huh, Cody?
I think it might be in that the Strange Stories, Amazing Facts and True Stories, or whatever that book is that I've pulled from many times. I originally was going to do this for one of our legally conspired shows. Our legally haunted sub-series, when we have our attorney on retainer come in and talk about ghost law, and we were going to discuss that. But seeing as that we got Michael, and Michael, you just wrote your first novel and you were a writer, that I thought this is a great story
for sure
to discuss.
I mean, you say I wrote my first novel. Really, Stalin wrote it, but I was the tool, the vessel through which.
Did you feel like it just flowed out of you, Michael, and just like, it just all went in a big rush? It wasn't even me.
I did think that one chapter that was about just, wave after wave of meat puppets being thrown into the grinder to stop the spread of the fungus was a little weird.
You're like, this is either Pink Floyd or Stalin possessing him, one or the other. Yeah. Did you see that movie, Can You Ever Forgive Me? Or
No.
The Melissa McCarthy. Very similar about it's so interesting to me that, I mean, I guess people used to care more about books, but that you could, I'm just imagining someone trying to pull that in the world of film, which is so interesting. Or being like, if Spielberg was like, I'm finishing AI for Kubrick, but actually I'm really true to the vision because Kubrick's like lives in my soul.
I'm channeling Kubrick is using me as a puppet, and really Kubrick's directing this still. Yeah, that would.
Or I'm honestly surprised some like really vibey indie director has not said I'm the second coming of so-and-so, Orson Welles or whatever.
Yeah. Orson Welles' new movie.
I'm Orson Welles reborn. Yeah.
Well, Orson Welles, as the listeners of the show know, he actually lives inside my head. I have been known to be possessed by Orson Welles from time to time. Drove my wife insane when I was prepping for one of our specials where I do a parody of Orson Welles, and I was trying to get the impression right, and I was just talking to her as Orson.
Well,
and she was not.
Yeah, you're doing.
She
you're
didn't
doing the
naturally switch to doing the Pinky voice.
No. It's bad copy. Look, if you show me a way to start a sentence with the word "is" that emphasizes "is," I'll go down on you. Actual quote from the man.
Totally.
Offering to fillet an audio engineer.
I like the critic parody of that. Yeah.
Yes.
Johnson frozen peas full of country goodness and green penis. That's terrible. Oh, what luck. There's a fry in my beard.
My favorite is later in that same episode when he is dead and shows up as a ghost.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm just here to tell you about my undying love for Mrs. Pell's fish sticks. Oh, yes. They're even better when you're dead.
Or my God, the wine. I hope everyone listening has seen the wine ad where he's fucking shit-faced.
Oh, God. They have to do take after take. Yeah.
It's just like a reel of 20 takes of...
Are you drinking the wine?
Super funny. And someone at one point is like, wait, are you drinking every take you're drinking a full glass of wine? Yeah. Leave me alone. I made Citizen Kane. I'm having a hard second act in life. Yeah, man. I really want to read it now, to be honest.
Oh yeah, it's it's 27 chapters. I read about 10 of them, and then I skipped and read the last 3.
Did the styles remind? Like, obviously, I'm coming from the stance that the most likely answer is they wrote it themselves. Did it strike you as similar to Twain's style at all? Like, did they even try?
They were trying, but there was. Want to hear the opening paragraph?
Sure.
I'm not going to do his voice. Maybe I should do Orson Welles.
Yeah, do Orson Welles for this.
Bad copy. That's my in phrase. Bad copy. As every well-bred story has a hero, and as there seems better material in Jap than any other party to the story, we will dignify him. Mary Heron feebly asserted her rights in the children by naming them respectively Fanny, Maud, Jasper, James, and Agnesia. Jasper deteriorated, he became Jap.
Poor
and Jap he remained.
Agnesia.
Agnesia,
Yeah.
what did she do?
She actually becomes Magnesia. That happens later. No joke. That's
What?
actually in there.
Yeah.
Despite the
Then her
fact that
fourth form is Freeznesia. And she has 3,000 power.
the fact that Fanny Maud developed into Fanny Maud and Agnesia changed her cognomen without recourse to law to Mabel, the folks in Happy Hollow continue to say Magnesia long after she left its fragrant depths. The father of the little herons was a kingfisher. He spent his hours of toil on the river bank and his hours of ease in Mike's place. One Friday, good luck peered through the dingy windows of the little shanty where the herons starved, froze, or sweltered. It was a Friday. As I remarked before, Mary was washing. He didn't remark before. We just read the... Anyway. Yeah, it goes on like that.
You gotta love a
There
book
were-
that starts with, anyway, as I was saying,
Yeah.
Harry Potter's still there.
I told
Let's
you about
get
this
into
already.
it. Yeah.
Well, Jacob Marley was dead to begin with, as I said.
Oh, yeah, true.
Right? Yeah, there were parts where I read whole paragraphs and I had to go back and like, wait, what the fuck did I just read? Like, what even was that?
Mhm.
Yeah, so when they were writing it, though, they had to modify the Ouija board. So they added extra, punctuation marks and stuff
Oh,
like
right,
that. So
of
that he could,
course.
because he had to keep spelling out comma, period. And they're like, this is just fucking untenable.
Yeah, so ultimately, I'm like, the brain that really is writing it is the person with their hands on the planchette, right?
Yeah,
I
Right,
would
because
say
there's
of
three
the
people.
three-
But yeah.
Yeah, that's the person actually writing the book. And I gotta say, that sounds hard to me. Like, I just
Yeah.
wrote a book, and the idea of dictating it letter by letter, I would even be like, oh, wait, I misspelled that, go back. Or what word was I spelling? Because if it's a long word, and you're
Yeah.
like, B. Okay, got it. I forget what
Yeah.
I was spelling. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it seems so hard to me.
Yeah, it's kind of like Stephen Hawking having to move the cursor with his eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but he managed to. He had a thing where he had shorthand phrases and words
Yeah.
too. It wasn't.
And he
It wasn't
also-
literally every.
Also,
letter.
there wasn't. He have to rely on somebody who's then looking at the screen and then yelling out. He selected A, A,
Right,
you
and
know,
then someone
so forth.
inscribing it.
Yeah.
I wonder if, I don't know if you have a picture or whatever, but I would think the expanded Ouija board should also have like and the A and.
Oh, yeah.
So you can
Oh,
just
yeah,
pop those in
the
real quick.
100 most common words.
There you go.
He
yeah.
he specified that he wanted an M dash, and you guys know an
Mhm.
M dash.
I mean, that's
Um,
the dash that implies that something's being interrupted, right?
Yeah, but it has to be a specific length because there's two dashes.
Is that like
that
a
are different
long
than
hyphen? It's like a long
Yes.
hyphen.
So there's an N dash and
Yeah.
there's an M dash. And then the M dash used to be basically, we've kind of replaced that with parentheses in sentences. So it used to be you'd have the break with the M dash, and it's called an M dash because it is the same width as an uppercase M in a typesetter's office.
Oh.
Yeah. And so he specified specifically he wanted an M dash. Although they could have just said, like, dude, we just know that dash is, for all intents and purposes, will always be the M dash, but whatever. But the question is, like, yeah, did they actually even modify this board at all, or is this just bullshit? Because they could just say this happened.
Well, that was what I was
Nope.
thinking. Is if this is they're all in cahoots. Do you think they're really gonna play
Did
act
they
out?
even do this?
Yeah,
You're
did they
like,
just
didn't
write it?
Need to do it.
That
Yeah,
would be
who
unless
says they
somebody's
did it?
watching and they're doing it publicly. Like, why
True.
would you do it that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I imagined they would do it just to.
Well,
be
I don't know.
honest.
Maybe they
Well, that's.
had friends.
I guess I'm giving the benefit of the doubt
Yeah.
that they're deluded and they think it's real. You're
Okay.
right that it's more likely that they know it's fake. And
Well,
it's
that
nothing.
often comes up in-
That's the obvious answer, but
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
can be crazy too.
This comes up often in our show when it's like some kind of a hoax, and the big question is often like, well, who was in on it? Did they believe it?
Right.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't know, and we can hypothesize one way or
Yeah,
another.
I think a good example of that is when we talked about Om Seti, who claimed that she was the reincarnation of a priestess to Seti the First in ancient Egypt. And
Oh, yeah.
the question was like, did she really believe this? Or was she a woman who just was like a really good Egyptologist who nobody took seriously because she was a woman at the time? until she started to say like, oh, no, this is all like spirit memories. And then they're like, oh,
Right.
yeah, of course, spiritualism. That makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe like, yeah, at a certain point, maybe you just start believing in your own shit.
It could be,
you know?
yeah, it could be a little bit of both or change from one to the other over time. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. When do the cult leaders start believing? You know?
And which, right, because there are cult leaders. I thoroughly believe that L. Ron Hubbard, from all like clues that we can gather, fully knew that was a scam. Like,
Yeah.
Well, he was a science fiction author, and
yeah.
And it wasn't his
Yeah.
first scam either.
No,
He had, like,
I
pulled
think
other
he was
scams.
proud of like, I can prolifically take advantage of this many people with just my writing. I'm amazing at this. Versus cults where you're like, well, that guy also drank the Kool-Aid and died writhing on the floor. I guess he believed he really
yeah,
was
he must
Jesus
have
or
believed.
whatever.
He
Yeah.
really he followed through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually hope that our listeners do go out and find this on Project Gutenberg and read it, because just the introductory,
but we can put a link.
Letter.
We'll put a link in
Yeah,
the show
just-
notes.
yeah.
Yeah.
just the first like letter where she details out the whole process and has like lengthy like bits of back and forth of them talking to Mark Twain and him like calling them idiots. Is pretty amusing. At one point he claims that like they said that he abandons, or he starts in the middle of a chapter that has no bearing on anything they've already done. They're like, wait, this is like nonsense. This isn't what we were talking about. And he blames her husband's pipe tobacco smoke. He's like, oh, well, he's not smoking my brand and it threw me off. And also there's other spirits here who are trying to take control from me because it's a, you know, like it's very hard to get a connection to the living world. And so everybody's trying to get in here. I imagine him like, you know, it's like somebody
He's in
like,
a phone booth in the
exactly.
in
The old
the
movies in
afterlife.
the phone booth. I was like, no, just stop. And speaking of him berating them, I said that she had had correspondence with him before. And so in 1902, she had attended a lecture that he was at. And her husband like transcribed the whole lecture and then sent the transcription to Mark Twain, who was actually really grateful. He's like, oh yeah, because the people who were there, who were like the official transcribers, didn't do a good job and missed out, and they like paraphrased, but this is a good job. So he sent a letter back like, kudos. She then contacts him and is like, oh, you know, I'm from Hannibal, Missouri, where you're from. And isn't that a coincidence? And I'm trying to be a writer. Will you check out my stuff? And he's kind of like, oh yeah, you know, he humors her and like tells her like, don't give up. She actually says like, do you think nobody's publishing me because I'm a woman? And he's like, I don't think that's it at all. It's because you suck. But he doesn't actually say that. And then on the letter, like another letter she sends back to him where she like basically says, thank you for the advice. And then she opines that if he were to start fresh at that time, she's like, there's so many people competing. And she said, there's so many oars in the water. How do you get your paddle in there? She's like, I think that even you, Mark Twain, if you tried to start now, nobody would publish you because it's just such a crowded market. It's like, how do you get your voice heard? He wrote on the envelope in bold letters, idiot. And then next to that, save this letter. So like, he thought it was like that she was, you know, he didn't, just calling her, oh, this is so stupid, but I need to save this so I can laugh about it later, basically. Which makes me very nervous about all the unsolicited emails I have sent to my heroes, asking them to come on this show.
Sure.
Michael's like, oh shit, he knows I saved his email.
Now you'd imagine they just delete that and blow it off, but you're like,
Yeah.
you walk into Mark Twain's office and the letter you wrote is framed on the wall, or it's like a dartboard.
That's
Right?
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the clock. We have a little bit of time, and I want to get into the second half of the show. So this is where we're going to stop to do our
Are we getting dig for
obligatory.
bones?
We're going to go dig for some bones.
What was that laugh? I asked myself. I'm trying to recreate that as much as possible. I don't think I've ever laughed like that in my life. That was new. What is that? This is my new laugh for 2024. New year, new laugh.
We have a spanking new podcast for your ear holes called Doom Generation.
Available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Later, Doomers!
Do you like beer?
Of course you do.
Do you like good food?
You better believe it.
Then we have the show for you.
It's the Hoppy Trails podcast.
I'm Nick.
I'm Travis, and on each episode of Hoppy Trails, we invite you to come along on our journey to explore craft beverages and the foods that accompany them.
Check out Hoppy Trails on hoppytrailspod.com or listen wherever you find your podcasts. Connect with us on Instagram at hoppytrailspod or reach out to hoppytrailspod@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Come travel the Hoppy Trails with us, and remember to always say yes to the hoppy ending.
Cheers!
Oh, we're back. Those were some bones, weren't they? Oh my gosh, yes. Hey, hey everybody. we're still here with Michael Swaim and discussing stuff. Yep, we're all here. So yeah, that was the first half. What else are we going to talk about, Cody?
Well, I wanted to kind of pivot to like a modern kind of echo of this whole thing. The idea of somebody writing something posthumously through a Ouija board or some other medium, this automatic writing. I kind of saw parallels to generative AI today. And I thought that might be kind of an interesting thing to talk about, especially as you're a writer, Michael.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so
nominally
in The Climb, spoilers, because I do want to also, we're going to talk about The Climb, but I just want to say there's a part in it where you claim, I suspect this is not actually how it went.
I am going to say.
I don't want to spoil things. Okay.
The book is. There's, in some sense, like a really big mid-book twist.
Yeah.
So if people care, no, I'm just doing the caveat. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I know Michael from Cracked or whatever. He wrote a book. Go read it in pause or whatever. If you care, it is a major twist. But let's spoil it now. I spoil everything. So like halfway through the book,
before you say anything, I will put in a little.
Garth hasn't finished yet.
No, it's all right. I don't mind. But after, right now, I will insert a skip ahead this many minutes for anybody who doesn't want it, and that way you won't miss the rest of this whole episode.
Yeah.
So I'll say now, here it is inserted. Hi everybody, this is Garth from the future. You all know me. I hate spoilers, and I have to say that the next 15-20 minutes of the conversation, while we talk about the book, we don't really get into plot points or any, like, huge reveals. The closest we get is talking about the format of the storytelling, and if you don't want to even hear that, I would just skip ahead about 30 seconds from the ding that's coming up, and then you can listen on. There might be a few minor spoilers, but nothing that even would bother me, and I'm very sensitive to these things, so you should be all right. So when the ding happens, if you don't want to hear about the general layout of the book, skip ahead 30 seconds, and here comes the ding. Okay, now go ahead.
All right. So like halfway through the book, quite intentionally, it up till that point, it reads like a very straightforward novel, fantasy novel, where you're rooted in the fantasy universe and things proceed in a sensible order. Yes. But then halfway through the book, it becomes an epic poem and then a screenplay and then AI generated. Like it goes off the rails.
As I was reading it, I was turning to my wife and like telling her like kind of like, oh man, this is great and this stuff. And I'm like, I'm like, well, now it's like this. And she's like, so what is going on? It's the best I could describe it. And I know that comparison, people often hate being compared, but the best way I could describe The Climb is it's Siddhartha if it was really The Naked Lunch and it was written by Kurt Vonnegut.
Wow. I mean, I love that. Thank you so much. I think of it as Finnegan's Wake for pop culture.
Okay. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Or an aspect of it is I tried to, because I do work, live, and breathe nerd culture and pop culture. Mm-hmm. One goal was to put in so many references that are so subtle and obscure that to fully relate to the book, it requires what I think a lot of our generation has, being completely steeped in pop cultural elements. Yeah.
There were ones that you popped in there that were like little kernels that would pop out to me where I'm like, oh, wow, like that's for me. That's for me. You know,
that's the feeling that I love and that I wanted to give is I hate fan service when you're like, well, that's for everyone. Yeah, this is when Batman met the Bat. We get it. I love fan service when you're like, wow, no one would get that. That feels like it's just for me.
It personalizes it for sure. Yeah.
that's actually kind of how I do this show. Garth knows.
Oh, Cody's constantly making references I don't get, and he's like, "Don't worry, the listeners understand."
Yeah. Like
Fair
like
enough.
maybe one or two of the listeners.
It's not for me.
So are you like someone out there, like one person? I just made their day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so there's a part after the twist where
Yeah.
you make the claim that it is written by with the help of generative AI. I suspect that is not the case, just because I've read so much of your stuff and I'm familiar with your style.
Wrong. It's
You really did that. Really, is how it worked
100%
out?
accurate. I did not fudge anything. Well, a big part of it is that I have read text and those are my edits to the story. But no, it was very important to me that what was actually on display in that section was uncontrolled by me, which is interesting. We're talking about the Ouija stuff. I really wanted a portion of the book to be out of my control. Also, a structural theme of the book is it's about climbing a tree, and is that as you go higher up the tree, it's also supposed to represent like humanity going forward in time. It goes from being in the past to medieval to modern day to eventually like a sci-fi realm in the upper branches.
I've been noticing that I'm in the midst of it because I am a very slow reader, and it's one of those things that if I read it too fast, it takes some digesting, and I'm very much enjoying it. I'm in the middle of the symbol guys. I think I'm
the guys who speak in symbols.
Yeah, the guys. I'm a little less than halfway through, and
how is that going to be audiobook? I know you're doing the audiobook right now, but how can you do that?
There's two ideas.
I was thinking sound effects would work.
I went with the easier one, which is I rewrote the book in such a way. Like the preferred director's cut will always be the physical version because another thing is the book includes visual iconography, and even the physical edition like that you can get on barnesandnoble.com or whatever, I had to take the symbols out because they're full color, blah blah.
And some are copyrighted.
So there's two versions of the book. If you want the book as intended by the artist, it's a PDF is the ultimate, because then I had full control over the image and the layout. And then behind that, I'd say the physical copy and then the audiobook. But it's not like I dislike the audiobook, and I still just want people to imbibe it. And I think because people know me, a lot of people nowadays, at least as a podcaster, I'm anticipating there are many people out there who are waiting for the audiobook. So I'm still think it comes across in audio.
Honestly,
but I rewrote
I
it.
am. I'm waiting for the audiobook, even though I'm reading it anyway, because that's
no worries.
how I digest most books.
But I can't. I've tried audiobooks so many times, but even if I'm just like walking around the block and listening, the world is too distracting. Like my mind wanders at like, look at that tree.
Yes.
But anyway, so I also wanted that part to mirror the advancement of how storytelling has gone. So that's why it goes epic poem to screenplay to AI.
Yeah. But the AI bit, like, even as I was reading it, it seemed like something that you... Maybe just because you gave it such specific prompts, and you edited. I know the red text is you editing.
One point of the section is that the prompts get more and more and more specific, until which I was very excited to do. At the end, I just say, finish the story and see what comes up. Yeah.
No, it is really, because like having listened to No Side and is it, I always say the name wrong.
Sad and Important. Daniel O'Brien named that one.
Yeah. And I made the same mistake last time we talked. I misnamed it as well.
No worries.
But listening to both of those, that story about, Orion seems like it would have fit in nicely with any of those.
Oh, that's absolutely a story beat for beat that was in my notebook that I had intended to write as a straightforward sci-fi story.
Yeah,
and
but then you gave the prompts. Yeah.
So, I think if you go through the section... I hate to say this because it's complicated. We could do a whole episode about it. AI as a tool versus the ethics.
Yeah.
My major takeaway is I think the fact that AI technology requires that we destroy the planet even further and accelerate that process trumps all other concerns. Like I am concerned about whether robots will replace artists or whatever, but I'm like, that's enough of a reason to be like, we can't do it. It's out of our price range right now. It will destroy the world.
Yeah,
so
the environment is the number one priority.
That actually kind of segues into another question I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
It's on the same topic, and it is about the climate.
Well, but sorry, I just wanted to finish the thought by saying what I hate to say is ChatGPT was, other than things that I make fun of, like I would never use the phrase shimmering galaxies swirling so many times. It uses the same phrases over and over because it's not aware of how that reads. Like it seems unaware of if you always describe the galaxy as swirling, it starts to become numbing or whatever.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's really good at taking the prompts and spitting out a B- level version of exactly what you asked for. It was very accurate. I wrote that story. Like that story was always those plot elements. Yeah. But it nailed it.
No, it really did. I was kind of that's why I suspected. I'm like, this can't be real.
No.
And that actually kind of worries me a bit more now. But that actually, the thing about reusing phrases happened when they were writing Jap Heron, apparently. There was a paragraph where Twain supposedly used the same word like 6 times. And they're like, hey, can you want to rewrite that? You know, and they're like, okay. But the other question I had is you talked about the moral implications and the cost of AI as a tool for art.
Are we done with the spoilers so I can...
Actually, no, this is something... So when... I think it might have been around the time that Michael and Abe are sniffing each other's farts or self-laid, or it might have been in the movie theater. There's Michael says, I'm afraid it's the character, a bit about how the tools are out of reach for artists. Like think of all the great things that could have been movies that could have been made by people who couldn't afford the tools. Yeah. And now I'm thinking like what you just said about the cost of this tool of AI. It's like, can we still I guess what I'm trying to ask is does AI, can it be used as a tool for those people who want to create as an art, but don't really have the ability? Is this somehow level the playing field, or is it just making the playing field worse for everybody?
Yeah. So let's set aside the environment just cause it's fruitful to isolate and actually talk about that part. So if it wasn't bad for the environment, I think the moral implication on artists is very interesting, even medium to medium, because I was just chilling with my homie who does rap loops and beats, and he uses this thing called Udio where you just say make a rap loop and it makes it, and then you go make it a little more house music, okay, add violins, blah blah blah, and
computer make the table wood.
Right. He thinks that's incredibly empowering, and is in Star Trek they use the holodeck to go make a table, okay, now adjust it this way. Also, what is Photoshop? Show me the thing. Okay, adjust it this way and this way. You're just telling it how to do that with clicks and bleeps and bloops. I'm just telling the computer to make what I want based on bleeps and bloops. Now, the counter argument being, those bleeps and bloops, the computer, at least at the current level technology, can only harvest and reshuffle from a pool of existing bleeps and bloops. That is a legitimate, what happens when you make a copy of a copy of a copy, and the only story flow that we have access to is regurgitated material. And as I said, at least at the current level, I would argue that the best writing ChatGPT can spit out is B+, C-. On a good day, it's B+, right? Yeah. And that has to be a competent writer behind the wheel, forcing it to do that. So really interesting to me to talk to artists who do like it and aren't scared. That musician was and so then I'm well, what about all the people who their current job is generating loops for nothing? Right. And, he has the argument that I've been hearing that I don't know that I'm torn on, that I'm confused about, which is one, technology moves along and the nature of work changes. And they're right. They accused me of you say that about coal miners. I feel bad that you all lost your jobs, but for the sake of the earth and technology coming along, now we have clean energy. We don't need coal miners anymore. You have to just suck it up and get a different job. And he's so why are artists special? Suck it up and get a different job. I
have to say, as an artist, that is kind of fair. Damn.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't agree.
Okay.
I don't agree at all.
I don't think I agree. My emotions don't agree. My gut doesn't agree, but it's an interesting philosophical argument.
It's a good point. I don't know if I agree with it, but boy,
no, because you're denying. But creativity is one of the core things of humanity. It's what makes us.
But so is providing electricity to the masses. Everything.
Not.
But your point about leveling the playing field, I think that's infinitely interesting because it also infinitely interests me as someone who's into philosophy, like what is identity and what forms,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like, I am just a confluence of characteristics unless you believe in a God that has a personal interest in shaping my fate, which I don't. I believe it's more likely that it's a confluence of like random quantum waveforms and the cause and effect forces in the universe just equating out, and how I was raised and what my genes are. So given all that, as we've said, like if I, whatever I is, if it even exists, was born into a completely different situation, different body, I would just be that person and do everything they would do. So like, why should someone who is not creatively inclined be barred from expressing their imagination to a refined degree?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you've ever read the Vonnegut story, Harrison Bergeron,
Yes.
that's the extreme form of that. Is like, and I don't know where I land on the idea of, right, can you only play a gay character if you're a gay actor? Well, can you only play a black character if you're a black actor? Probably. That one feels pretty clear to us. But let's take that down the, can you only play an astronaut if you've had astronaut training? Like, one is race and one is job, so I understand the distinction there. But my point is, you can craft situations where you get closer and closer and closer to the middle, where you're like, I don't know about that. Can we only write about what we know? Or part of fiction is pretending you know what someone very different than you might think or do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very fascinating.
It's somewhat maddening.
Where I've landed right now, but it's evolving, is if the movie's about the power or the specific ins and outs of the queer gay experience, then yeah, it should be a gay actor.
Yeah.
If they just happen to be gay because we're normalizing that it's fine to be gay, I think it could be Nick Offerman or whatever. But that's me. I could totally be open to people going, I disagree strongly, and I would understand that.
I've wanted to ask you about a specific sci-fi story, just real quick, if you've ever read it. There's a story called The Toonsmith. Have you ever?
No.
I think I've shouted it out once on the Discord to you. The Toonsmith, the basic synopsis is it's in a future where all creative things are capitalistic. So like art has to serve the function of selling a product. And so all music is
so it's a
advertising
documentary about modern day.
Yeah. So basically, but it was written in the 1950s.
Yeah.
And it's about how all music is purely jingles. And so there's a guy who is like the best jingle writer. And I can't remember if they use computers to help him do it or not. But and so people are always requesting like, play, Johnson's medicated dentifrice. And he's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. And at some point though, he composes an original musical piece that has no purpose. It's just to please him. And he starts doing this, and then it like freaks people out. And so he like presents it over TV, and it like just threatens to destroy society, where people like, no, like they're convinced he's using some kind of mind control device to fuck with people's emotions. He's a threat to society. And and it goes from there.
Right. Because he can just use this sequence of sounds to make me feel emotions. That's like mind control.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Reminds me of, I forget whether it's the pedestrian or the walker or the perambulator, but gosh,
to move forward.
As I get older, the Fahrenheit 451 guy, Bradbury, one of my all-time favorite authors, who I still can't always remember people's names immediately, did that story about same thing, but car culture. There's automatic flying cars. The world is much hotter, so everyone is pretty much used to going to the parking garage, getting in their car. It drops you off where you're going. And this guy decides to go on a walk around the block, and the cops stop him, and he gets in an altercation. They end up beating him to death or something. I'm like paraphrasing it, but you get it, right? It's like,
wow.
And I powerful, if we lose, it's like the lost art of letter writing, but the lost art of anything. Or like another philosophical point I like to talk about is, if we do get to the point where we're in the Matrix and the world is completely despoiled and ruined, but we live a rich, fake personal life where we just get goo nutrients, but we're genuinely happy in our minds. Is that good or is that bad? Did we win or did we lose?
Some say we lost it all.
Yeah.
Or would you want to go into the real world, which was explored in the movie The
Which
Matrix?
is The Matrix, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
But that'd be a hard one for me, honestly. And as much as I love reality, it's like, can I just do it a little bit? I'll go in for 12 hours one way, 12 hours the other, something like that.
Okay, we have 10 minutes left before you have to go. I wanted to also quickly address that you and Garth collaborated on a project together.
Please do.
And
Oh yes, we did.
I want to see if you guys want to pitch some of that and talk about how it was to work collaboratively on that.
Oh yeah, So we did a comic together.
Yeah, I'd love to hear Garth talk about it first, honestly.
Okay. So Michael and I were chatting about this story idea that he had, and talked a little bit about it's like a heist story, and there's some twists and other things to it, and did a little bit of back and forth about that, and Michael wrote it, and then I drew it, and it was a very fun, easy thing. He sent me the script, and then I drew little sketches of everything. We rearranged a few things, and then I drew the final one, and it was very
straightforward, it sounds like.
It was very straightforward and very, very smooth. I've done collaborations with several people over the years, similar to this, and sometimes things get worked and reworked a million times. This one was it took a while for me to draw, but apart from that, it was very, very smooth and a lot of fun. Yeah.
Nice. I would also describe it as smooth and fun. Magical to me to see, the words turn into something different, which is why I like to fuck with so many different mediums, and why I feel like what's the point of. So that short story exists as like a written prose short story, but after we made the comic, I deleted it because I feel like that story is a comic now, or that's what I like. And I've had short stories that I converted to songs, and short stories that I've converted. Like I said, the Orion whole section of that book was originally a standalone short story that I tweaked several plot beats of to make it be of a piece with the rest of the novel ultimately. So anything can become anything, and I think obviously there's media at which I don't do the thing, so you have to collaborate with someone. And what would be the point if you're controlling every like the point
is there were many times where I was like, hey Michael, do you want me to do this or this? And you're like, dude, you're the artist. You're right.
And I don't know why you wouldn't leave everyone to do whatever their specialty is. But I know there are some creators who are like, because I feel so precious about my baby,
this is how I picture it exactly.
Then write a novel. It's not collaborative. Is how I feel.
Did you feel because it was kind of like passing the potato, like you did the first half, I did the second half because it was written then drawn. Did you feel like when you got the final product it was like an adaptation almost? Because there were so many choices visually that I made that you were aware of, but you didn't give me a lot of notes when I did the sketches. So
no, I felt
it's a different kind of collaboration than like working on it together the whole time. It's more like one than the other. So like, I wonder if you were like surprised by the choices that I went with, maybe. I don't know.
No, I think because my background is internet sketch comedy specifically. So the thing with internet sketch comedy, especially for the generation that was raised on The Simpsons, I mean, Marx Brothers did it too, but for our generation, Simpsons really nailed like, oh man, you can fit like 10 jokes a second, or I didn't realize they can be saying jokes and there's a joke on the screen in text and there's a sound effect joke. Like that was remarkable at the time versus other sitcoms where it's like every 10 lines there's a big punchline. Simpsons was like bam, 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 joke, joke, joke. Iconic punchline, like 10 an episode. And because of that and because my focus was initially comedy, it's all additive. So the real collaboration I'm thinking of there is between the writer and the editor. So it cracked. I used to do a 2-lecture series when new people came in called Write Like an Editor and Edit Like a Writer. And it basically boils down to, from both ends, noting that it's an actual living collaboration, meaning the screenplay is not a set of DNA instructions that then produce the video. What you wrote is what you imagined. What happened on the day is the result of the random vagaries of life and a bunch of random shit. What the editor then has is all those random pieces. What the editor produces, that's their contribution to the process. So when I edited, I would constantly add, like, it would be funny if clip art of a dolphin like jumped across the screen here. And thankfully, it cracked. Everyone was such a game collaborator that the writers would be like, yes, that's funny. And the editors would be like, can you add a voiceover joke here, blah, blah, blah. So I've been very primed to be collaborative because my background, I think, is improv and sketch. I do think, like, if I went to USC and was, had my master's in directing film, and I made 3 big shorts and took them to festivals, and I thought of my shorts as very important things, and in my life I'll only make 4 or 5, I would definitely be more on that side. Because I am a perfectionist. I do care about the quality, and it did only come in time. Like, it took 10 years of being in the industry for me to feel in my bones. I made 1,000 things. Even if I disagree, like, Garth can win this one if that makes him feel like he's artistically fulfilled. I'll make something else later. I'm still right or like whatever, but I'll just do it later in some other project. And
the art of letting go.
And not even that, but genuinely, this will be richer and more interesting because it has diverse points of view represented. Stuff is samey if it's like,
if it's just one voice.
Yeah, like I really like Wes Anderson, but there's a point in his career where I fell off because it's like, I get it. You meticulously control it so it feels exactly like this. Tim Burton, ditto. So I kind of only needed 3 or 4, and now it's like you've seen one, you've seen them all. Whereas if you collaborate, that's why I also wrote sketches intentionally in total random combinations. 2 people or 3 people, totally different sets of people, because it's like jamming with a band. Like, it's interesting to see what a Cody and Michael improv is versus a Daniel and Michael improv. They have totally different dynamics.
I really enjoyed watching One Last Job come together because
it came out great. Yeah.
Having been a fan of yours, Michael, for, years, and then being also, like, I was a fan of Garth before we really met and became friends because I had seen some of his artwork and we were, like, in the same social circle.
And talking about bang for your buck, I think I wrote a script that's like, I think you could cram this into 8 pages because I know a lot of artists are, you got to pay me per page or we got to keep this short, dude. And Garth was like, I think it fits better over 20 pages, so that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I have this thing with comic books where I really want the artwork to breathe, and for all the stuff that had to happen, I'm like, I do not want to put, like,
I agree.
8 panels.
I just wasn't.
I know, but you didn't want to overburden me, and I appreciate that very much. But yeah, no, that was definitely my idea.
You're like me, where you're like, well, I'm doing it because I want to make a cool thing, so I'm going to go all the way and do the way that I think it will be the best. So yeah, I do. And I'll say we've made, like, some money, probably not enough money off of it to justify, especially the draw time again. But I'm hoping, things snowball. Abe and I are making a movie right now.
I have this hope
if at any time in the future, right. Because people are like, if at any time in the future I get a big break, hopefully people go back and buy more of the comic, and someday I'll be like, okay, we made $2,000 off the comic. Let's do another one.
I feel like any minute now, somebody, the right person will see it, and then, like, hundreds of people, thousands will see it, because sometimes that does happen, even months later. So, well, you never know.
I really want to see more of you guys working together. I think that Garth's art and Michael's writing is peanut butter and chocolate.
I'd love to have Garth draw The Big Hunt if you happen to read that one I dropped recently.
Oh, I haven't read that one.
I'll send it to you, Garth.
I'd like to see it, yeah. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do something again in the future, because I had a blast. Absolutely.
Well, we only have a few minutes left, so we got to have Michael plug his stuff. We've been mentioning a bunch of it throughout this whole thing, but go ahead and plug that.
Yeah. So as my other friends who have focused more on one lane have told me in confidence, in quiet moments, my career would be further along if I didn't focus on such a wide variety of interests. But that's what I like. I can't help it.
Yeah,
I have that problem too.
If you go to patreon.com/smallbeans and you click on the shop tab, you will find my novel, which we've been discussing. That's available as a PDF, which is like the deluxe version for $20. Also for $20, you can get it as an e-reader version, which is the slightly rewritten version because e-readers can't show color symbols. If you go to barnesandnoble.com and search for The Climb Michael Swaim, you can buy the physical copy for $35. And I'm not the one who made it that expensive. I still only make like $1.50 off each. I just want people to read it. The audiobook will be out in August, so if you want to wait for that, feel free. And then in September, I'll be dropping a rap album at the same location. And as we said, there's already a comic book there as well. So novel, rap album, comic book. What else? We're starting a rowing team. Oh, and podcasts. That's the one.
Yes.
You can also find the main thing we do, which is our podcasts, just by searching Small Beans wherever you get podcasts.
I've been reading The Climb, the PDF version on my little Nook, and it's not in color, but I've referenced it.
But you get to see the physical.
Yeah, I get
That's
the
cool.
artwork, and I've found that to be a very good way to digest it, just because it's hard for me to look at a screen for a whole novel's worth. That's me.
That was hard.
Yeah,
I would love to get to the point where I can publish a physical version of the. Because obviously you can. You just have to be more famous than I am to get like a color hardcover book out there. Yeah, but we'll see.
Hey everybody, Cody jumping in real quick to shout out our Monster Squadron patron producers. These are the fine, fine people who, kick in that little extra every month to keep the show running. And because of that, they get their names read, like now. Travis Alexander, The Bi Barbarian, Rachel Krieger, Tom Dahl, Justin Duckham, Kelly Flynn, Gunnar Franks, Carla Harrington, Havelock, New Jared, Ken with 2 N's, Brian Lamb, TJ Levenhagen, Alicia Overton, Jordan Ramey, a different one but the same one, Blue Roan, and Tatum. Thanks, guys. Yeah. 2 last things. One was I asked questions from our Discord, and I know we don't have time to address all of them, but I have to ask one from my brother because it's one of his favorite jokes of yours, Michael. He really wants to know, what was the glow stick for?
Oh, in the pumpkin. I was
or
like,
the dishwasher. I liked the dishwasher.
Or the dishwasher, but I was like, no, the pumpkin was a candle. Sorry, and the head can and the pumpkin was a candle. The dishwasher was a glow stick. So you can't take my answer with a great deal of confidence because I barely remember any of the many, many videos we made in detail. So I'm basically just improvising a yes and answer right now that I think will be funny. But I'll say to light my dick. To light my dick.
He says that to me all the time because I showed it to him, and like Katie's delivery on that is like frantically.
We gave it to her the second time. Yeah.
That she's so upset and frantic.
I don't like the way that script is shot. Abe agrees. We had like a rough shoot.
Is that why it's gone? I couldn't find it. I wanted to watch it today.
But I still think the script and performances are great. It got taken down because it has my Sharona in it. So I have it. I'll send it to you if you really want. But I will. So as my last thing will be, there's a new phrase like that I'm really trying to get stick in people's heads as like an earworm. So I'm just gonna say it. If it sticks in your head, use it. Oh, pussy in bio. That's very funny to me. I don't know why.
I get it.
That's all.
It's pretty funny.
Use it. That's yours.
There's so many circumstances where I can use that in life.
Right, that's right. Comes up a lot.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. I can't express enough.
We loved having you on.
Thank you. Yes, my pleasure.
Wonderful time as always.
Anytime. And until next time, the only thing that's haunted
is you.
Woo!
You think that one of these imitations can take the place of a hand-wrapped Havana? Oh.
I wouldn't know.
Well, that's the problem I see here. All this technology only serves to take away life's simple pleasures.
Yes. Oh, yes. They're even better when you're dead.
The Least Haunted podcast is recorded before a dead studio audience and is a presentation of Sequoidea Productions, LLC.